Alright guys, so we're going to be talking about some romantic games, and this is going to be the second installment on the romantic period that I'm going to be doing. And last week I tried to draw a parallel between the romantic period proper, which is considered to be the 19th century, and what I consider to be the Renaissance of, well, a new romantic period that is being ushered in by these fantastic Alpha Zero games. This week I was thinking about showing you some more Alpha Zero games, but as I started doing a little bit of research, I found that a lot of really good players that are really good at explaining stuff had already done a really good job at going through these games. I'm thinking particularly of this series of videos that English Grandmaster Matthew Sadler did. And I would highly recommend them to anyone interested in reviewing these games. So I thought, well, it seems like it's already been done and it would be redundant to do it myself, especially because I didn't think I could really do it better than it had already been done. So then I started scratching my head and thinking, well, what am I going to talk about today? And I said, well, romantic period, I mean, really? Do these guys in the 19th century play more romantic chess than we play today? And I wasn't entirely sure that the answer was yes. Maybe if you compare the 19th century games with like games from the 1950s or 1940s, you could make a case for it. So I started doing a little research. And I started looking up some recent games, and by recent I mean the last 10, 20 years, to see what was going on. And I found some unbelievable games of this romantic style. So what I thought I could do is present a case to you today that the romantic period maybe wasn't necessarily ushered in by Alpha Zero, that it has actually been in place for quite a few years now. And immediately, this one game came to my mind. And what I'm going to do is, instead of showing you entire games, I just want to throw positions at you that happened in these recent games and the unbelievable moves that were played. So it's going to be sort of like a ping pong type of arrangement, because there's just so many that we wouldn't have enough time to go through all of them. So I remember I was watching this game like the day it was played, and I was like, this can't be happening. So Black had just played the move knight to h5. This is not the romantic period. But what would you play? Yeah?
Can you make that board bigger?
Oh yeah, my bad. Yeah.
Dig it.
Okay. So you're playing with white. Yeah, what would you do?
Maybe e5.
Okay, so e5 looks interesting. And what are you going to do after knight takes g3?
Then knight takes, and then I could like somehow put the queen on like the h5 square.
Right, so it would be really nice to get this queen over here and give checkmate, but maybe I can play f5. I mean, I'm still not entirely convinced this is right. And after takes, queen here, and maybe I can take, and after rook takes, I can go here. It's very scary. I'll admit that much.
Maybe like queen to g6, and then you can like take the knight to.
Ugh. Yeah.
Yeah, this is a very annoying.
So here.
And you don't, when rook down, it's not playable. Rook to
Oh.
f7.
Oh, even better. It's very
Oh, that looks pretty good.
it's very playable. So let's see, this idea of e5, just opening up the diagonal for the bishop, does seem very logical. Maybe I shouldn't help you make your attack stronger with knight takes g6. What happens if I just start with f5?
Yeah, that seems better.
Okay, but now it's very different, right?
Yeah,
Because
big
your queen is not getting to h5 so easily, and also your knight is not coming in.
Yeah, this is a whole different position.
Yeah.
The other one was less crossing.
By the way, the two players, I had never heard of them before. I was, there are like 2,500 players in playing the Chinese championship. And I remember the day the game was played, Kasparov said, this is the game of the decade. So,
Oh, really?
yeah.
That's saying something.
So in the game,
I'm thinking of how, I think that one of the themes is to stop that move.
this F5 move is
Yeah, I'm
really a
thinking-
very important resource.
I know, I'm thinking about some crazy move, like, and I don't know, like rook, F5, but I don't know if that's, it may be totally unsound,
I mean, it sort of reminds me of this famous Fischer-Benko game. I don't know if you remember.
Oh, yeah, I remember, yeah.
Where he played this rook to F6
Right.
and then got the bishop on the open diagonal and it was over.
But I'm looking at some crazy idea like that, since it's
Well-
a romantic move, that's a romantic move. I don't know if it's sound, though.
So you have romantic and then you have just rabid,
Oh, I was thinking.
Oh, really?
bishop takes d6.
Not a move I would have.
Right.
Wow.
And after queen takes
Knight
e5, and after queen e7, knight g3.
Wow.
And after knight takes g3, there you go. Rook takes f6, not allowing black to play the move f5. Because notice if you go h takes g3, now black gets f5 in again. So this is really the key move. So now, I mean, I'm going to take the knight and then I'm going to put the queen on h5 and it's going to be over. You just have no way of assisting this king on g8. So black played, it's not over yet, by the way. It still gets pretty amazing after this. So after king g7, just queen g4, leaving the knight on g3 because it's more important to give checkmate. And after rook g8, h takes g3, knight b7, rook f1, knight d8.
He's still fighting.
Yeah, I mean, he's defending f7, queen e4. So we're threatening now queen h7 followed by rook takes f7. So queen b7. Oh, did I just say rook takes f7? No, that's not really a threat. So d5, rook h8. And now, what would you guys play?
Did he? What's that sound?
Rook g6.
Close. Queen g6.
I wasn't going for the queen though. I thought you needed the
Oh
queen.
yeah, you can do that.
I thought it was rook.
So after takes, rook takes, this king is really begging for mercy on h7. And now you're just going to get checkmated. Rook h4 and rook g6 checkmate. So this game was played in 2011, and I think Kasparov was onto something when he said it was the game of the decade.
Yeah, bishop takes pawn. Not a move that was looking at it at all.
Have any of you seen this game? This is from, I believe, last year. No, 2017.
Oh, I saw it.
You saw this game?
No, not like live.
And actually, it might be easier to look at it this way.
Who's winning?
Who's winning?
Well, who's going to win?
Well,
Playing black side or white side?
we're looking at this from the black side, so that should be a sort of hint. I mean, black just played the move e5, right? Sacrificing the e5 pawn. But this is where things get really crazy. He goes d takes
I
c3.
was thinking he was going to sack his queen.
Yeah. And after rook takes d8,
Pawn takes b2.
pawn takes b2. And now king e2. Rook takes d8, and queen takes b2. And I mean, once you got rid of that b2 pawn, it seems like the worst is over, right? Knight a4, queen c2, knight c3, and king f3.
Yeah.
So this is the position black had envisioned when he sacrificed the queen. Now, the problem for white is that this king is very vulnerable here. And should we ever get to play a move like, well, g4 perhaps wouldn't work so well because it would enable the f4 square for the king. But if we could get a bishop to g4, then that would definitely create some serious mating threats. So black plays rook d4. The idea is if you go knight takes c6, well, then bishop g4 is checkmate. And if you go e takes d4, well, then I just go knight takes. And after king e3, knight takes c2, and I'm up a piece. So black reasons, I'll just go h3. And this way, I'm threatening to take on c6 because there's no bishop g4. And also, if black gives me enough time, I'll just go bishop h2, g4, and hide my king away on g2. So h5. Again, you can't play knight takes c6 because of bishop g4. And after pawn takes is checkmate.
What an annoying position.
So white decides to play bishop h2, threatening to go either g4 or king g3. So g4, king g3, and now rook d2.
Oh, wow.
So if you take the knight e4 and after king f4 or king h4, then we just take the queen and we're still up a piece. Right? So maybe like king h4, take with the bishop, just up a piece. So white plays queen b3. Knight e4 check. Only move, king to h4. Bishop e7 check. Only move, king takes h5. And now, what is the mating sort of pattern or image that we're looking for? What's that? Yeah, I mean, what kind of image would you think about if you're trying to deliver checkmate with black? What would it look like? Any ideas?
Well, I'm thinking of how I can get the rook in somewhere.
The where? The what?
The black rook, if I can. Not that one.
This one?
The other one.
The one on d2?
Yeah, if I can get it in somewhere.
Okay. I mean, this rook on d2 seems fairly active, while this one on a8 isn't really doing anything.
Does he have time for all that?
That's what he did. Played king.
Because, it like takes 3 moves to set that up.
Yeah, well, now it's going to take 2, because he just played king g7.
Is it fast enough? That's the only question.
So after bishop f4, he went bishop f5.
Wow, he has time for all that.
And now you're threatening to play rook h8, and rook takes h6, checkmate. So bishop h6, king h7, queen takes b7. And what now?
Bishop g6.
No, just rook takes f2. Very important move because now we're actually threatening knight g3 checkmate. So we're not just pawn grabbing, right? It's not like he said, oh, free pawn, right? He actually just wants to go for checkmate, and that pawn was in the way. So now white has to deal with two fronts, right? g3 and also the h file. So bishop g5. And now?
But can you move the rook here over like that?
Yep. So knight takes f7 was played. And then bishop g6. King takes g4. Knight e5. And white resigned, right? Because if king h4, well, we can just go king here, and after... Oh, wait, we can't do that because we're pinned. Haha.
Oh, okay.
So we would actually have to go to g8.
Okay.
And then after knight takes,
Yeah.
then bishop takes g5. Right? Because this bishop is pinned, so even if you go knight h6, we can just go rook takes, and that's still checkmate. So, you know, I would argue that this could also be considered the game of the decade. I mean, the other one was pretty good, but this one is not bad either. Let me show you a couple more games that were played recently. This one was actually played, was it this year or last year? White is David Paravyan, and black is Golubov, Saveliy Golubov. Both of them grandmasters. This one's, I would say, we were actually discussing before we started this lecture, you know, what really constitutes a great game? Is it just a mind-blowing move that was played, or a mind-blowing sequence of moves? Is the opposition that the opponent is facing relevant? Of course it is, but how relevant is it? It's not clear to me, right? There's no definition of what a great game is. You kind of know when you see it. But I think that the opposition, also the level of resistance, you know, a great game, you feel like you had to win it like 3 or 4 times over. Like this game that we just saw, I think is a great game because black had to create all these different mating patterns in order to really crack white's position. I wouldn't necessarily call this game that we have here like a great game on the same scale as the previous ones, but I think it's also very romantic in essence. So what would you guys play with white?
Well, I think I was thinking about knight takes h7.
All right, very good.
It was a pretty obvious idea.
And after bishop f5?
Oh, okay.
Right, so I mean the point is that if you go king takes h7, rook h3,
Right.
bishop takes, and you pick up the queen, right? So that's a nice discovery. The problem is that black can throw in this in-between move. And this makes things a little bit more complicated.
Oh yeah, but still could, well, you can always move the queen back, but I don't know if
So
that's the best.
you're
I don't know if
thinking
that's the best
queen
move.
here?
Yeah, I don't know if that's the best, but it's I don't know if that's best, but
Because maybe here I'm able to play this move.
yeah.
So, all right.
I really want, when you play that move, I want to play my bishop to C, to this is square. Yeah.
Right, c3, but you can't because...
I know that. That's the thing. It doesn't work.
So, after knight f6 check, king g7, what was your idea?
Bishop h5, h6 check.
So, bishop h6. Very good. And after king takes? So again, right, the idea, if you take the bishop here, we have this discovery, and we pick up the queen. So the king can't go to the h file. So king takes f6.
Oh, and now you do get a queen. You can move your queen. If you
Whoa. And after pawn take, I mean, if king takes,
Rook f3.
Are you?
Wait. Let's move. Oh, you're running away. Wait a
Yeah,
minute.
not so clear.
Yeah, because you're going to get G5 and
Bishop
at 1.2
C1,
if you give it enough time.
So you want to stall for a minute, okay.
Okay, so control.
So if I go here, you probably want to do something like that.
No, I'll go G4 like right away, and then.
Well, but if you go G4, then you allow my king to
Yeah.
escape. I'm not buying it.
Okay. But you said it was wrong.
But you can move your queen over to D.
You want to go to D2?
Yeah, I'm okay here.
Okay.
I'm threatening mate.
So you're definitely threatening mate.
So
I can't argue with that.
your king looks a little exposed here, so
It is.
I'm not that unhappy here.
So what if we do something like bishop E4?
Oh.
And I mean, I'm playing. I think. No, I think that we have still a lot of good moves for white, but I don't know. Like I'm single F3,
Mhm.
just off the top of my head.
All right. And can we do?
I think white has to be doing okay.
Yeah, this looks definitely like. I mean, for only a piece, we're only a piece down, and we're going to get it back.
And I have a good attack.
Yeah. So let's see. Do I have anything better here? Because Queen G5 really is a problem. Bishop E6 doesn't solve anything. No, this might be a good solution, but white decided to go for G4, threatening G5 mate.
Okay.
And if you take here, then I still have the discovery, right? And I win your queen. And of course, well, if you take the queen, oh, no, not G5 yet, sorry. Rook F3, check. And once you block the check, then G5 is checkmate. It's kind of a nice smothered mate. So against G4, black plays this crazy counter-attacking move, bishop F4. The point is, G5 doesn't work anymore because you just take it. And if you play bishop takes F4, then I can take your queen because against G5, now I have the G7 square available for the king.
Could you go back
Well,
to
that
the
move, I
to the
don't
part
know.
where the bishop was on when the bishop took the bishop?
So after here, bishop here,
Yeah, and then.
No, well, the queen is on queen.
And then when you push G5.
No, but
Oh no, you can push the pawn. I thought that I could check it there.
here, I can always do this, right?
Yeah.
you're
So
getting out of it.
yeah, so once the king shakes loose from F6, it seems like the worst is over for black. But this is really the key moment. And we have to think that white had to have seen this position when he played knight takes H7. And he had to have seen the next move, which is not an easy move to see.
Yeah, I'm looking. Let's see what.
Have any of you ever seen the game Adams Torre?
Wait, was he a Spanish?
It rings a bell, but I'm not sure.
Torre was a Mexican player.
Yes, yes.
Adams Torre, very famous game. Actually, a very famous puzzle. The game's not so famous, but there's a position that's just crazy. And I think that white had definitely done that puzzle at some point because the idea was there. White played the move Queen C7. But you didn't say it.
Oh,
So
I like that
again,
move. I like that move.
well, it's a good move. After bishop takes, G5 is checkmate.
Yeah. That's a good move. Definitely.
And you're also threatening Queen E7 checkmate.
But okay, so if he brings a rook over, that's, I wasn't sure.
So he took on H6. You're saying bring the rook over?
Yeah,
This one?
yeah.
Okay, and what are you going to do?
Oh, then you still have, no, you don't. Does the
Oh.
queen take the bishop and then you got the,
Well, this rook is hanging, right?
Yeah,
yeah.
I'm looking at rook takes rook.
I was looking at queen d6.
Oh, that's also.
Because again, the idea is always to deliver checkmate with g5.
Yeah, you have that queen who can do anything.
Yeah, but the problem is if I do this, I think you can just do something like that.
Well,
Well,
you get two.
I like the idea of can we get rid of? But if I play rook takes rook, well, am I letting you out? Am I letting you out? Yeah, maybe. So.
Well, this rook is so important because it cuts
I
your
know,
king off from the
I know,
e
that's
file.
what I'm worried about. I don't want the rook to get out like that. I don't want your king to leave so easily.
Yep.
Well, okay, so can you push the pawn to g5 first?
And after takes,
And now the queen can come up to d6.
Yeah, you do get an attack because now you check again. You can check again, and you do have the rook coming in, and you do win.
Yeah.
And you win. No, you can. Yeah, that's what I mean.
yep,
That's it.
The pieces come in pretty fast.
yep, that's a problem. So bringing the rook in doesn't really help. So black took on h6. And now after queen e5, king g5, h4, king takes, rook h3.
Oh, that's a nice move.
Yeah, right, because if king takes, simply queen g3 is
And then-
checkmate. So king g5, queen e7, and he resigned. Because, well, if you go king takes g4, queen h4 is checkmate. If you go king f4, queen e3 followed by queen g3 is checkmate. And if you go f6, again,
Same
queen
idea.
e3 takes and queen g3 is checkmate. So
But going back,
this is just kind of like an average game
Yeah.
for what we've been seeing from the past few years. I mean, it's not an average game, but it's a nice game. I want to see if I actually hadn't thought to show the game Adams-Torre, but it's going to be useful to compare the idea that we just saw. Now I forget the exact year. I think this is it. All right, that's enough. Yep, this is it. So move 18, okay.
oh, that's not Mickey.
Well, but
No, this is an other Adams.
This is a very. I think this is a very famous game.
It is a very famous game.
This I've seen. All these
Yeah.
queen moves. Like
Very famous, absolutely. So after bishop takes f6, it's white to move. What would you guys play here?
I've seen. I know what the theme is. So I'll be quiet.
All right. Anybody else?
Takes like
Rook where?
rook takes e8 after,
Rook takes e8,
yeah,
and after rook takes,
and then rook takes again.
and after queen takes.
I don't think it is.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think that we've really made a lot of headway here. What looks a little bit strange about black's position, like something that could become a problem?
His queen,
His queen? Why the queen?
because it's undefended.
It is undefended, and also it's, I wouldn't say overloaded at this point, but the queen is undefended, and it's doing a very important thing right now, which is protecting the e8 rook, which is very important to protect because this king doesn't have any escape square. So we see that the back rank turns out to be an issue for black. So white's next move has to target the unprotected piece and exploit the tactical theme here, which is the back rank.
Oh, queen g4.
Very good.
Yeah, that's the first move.
Now this isn't an epic game because of queen g4, right? This is just I used to play queen g4 on every Tuesday, basically. But after queen b5, it seems like black is able to keep the balance, right? Because the queen moves while still keeping the e8 rook protected.
Queen c4.
Very nice. Queen c4. So again, if we take the queen, we get mated in the back rank, which is not good. So black says, okay, you can have a draw, right? Queen g4, queen b5. But that wouldn't make a game epic.
No, there's more
Oh,
coming.
you take the rook.
Well, if you take the rook,
No.
what happens if I just take it? What's that?
The other rook with the queen.
So you want to take this rook here.
No.
Oh, no. Never mind.
No,
But then the rook just takes it, and you don't really have enough pieces threatening the back rank to really give checkmate.
There's some cute move.
This is really the tough part. Queen g4 and queen c4 have really been the warm-ups.
Yeah, I think I see the move, but I don't be quiet.
Queen c7.
Oh, you're on fire.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's right.
So now the queen is completely overloaded. It has to go back to b5. I don't know if everybody sees it, but you can't play rook takes queen because of back rank checkmate. You can't play queen takes queen also because of back rank checkmate. So you have to move your queen, and you have to stay along this diagonal. So black played queen b5. And what now?
Queen takes b7.
a4 first.
Yeah, I remember that.
Well, if you play queen takes b7, seems like an interesting move. Because I can't play rook takes e2 because of queen takes c8. And I can't play queen takes. Oh,
You can.
yes I can. Because if rook takes, I have rook c1.
Yeah.
Oh,
Nice little counterattack there.
Yeah.
So queen takes b7 would be a pretty epic blunder.
Yeah, you have
no,
actually.
no.
Yeah.
You can
But
move your
still.
knight to e1, right? 'Cause
What's that?
Well, so after queen takes, and then
Yeah.
you play rook c1, then I can play knight e1, right?
Oh, yeah,
Oh,
good try.
that's pretty good.
This would then be considered epic blunder.
Yeah, it would still be epic. You'd still make the record books. So after a4, queen takes a4. Now?
Queen takes a5. I don't know.
Huh.
Yeah.
So same idea, right? You still can't take on e4 because of queen takes c8. So you have to move your queen. But the difference now is that you don't have queen takes e2. So this is a really sophisticated part.
Oh yeah, I know.
This a4 move followed by rook e4 to prevent the queen takes e2 counterattack. So now after queen takes b7, black resigned.
Yeah, that's just,
Because the queen is completely overloaded and we don't have any squares for the queen, right? And on the next move, we're going to lose the rook. It's not bad. That was really loud. So actually, I'm going to save this one. Forgot to include it. I'm building this little database with the most epic games ever played. And I forgot about this one. All right, so let's close out of that. Well, I'm going to show you a couple that you've probably seen because they're so famous. Close your eyes because I got to do the thing there. Has anybody ever seen this game?
Is it Shirov? Who's he?
Yeah, Topalov was playing with white and Shirov was playing with black. Actually, I'm going to do this thing. Is it Control 2?
Yeah. Control
Yeah.
2. When was this played?
1998.
Wait, he was a world champion, right?
No.
He wasn't Topalov?
No.
Is the object to draw or to win?
To win, always.
Well,
So I'll give you a hint. If the black king gets to e4, the endgame is winning for black.
D.
Well, I mean, if you give up all your pawns in the process, it's not.
Okay.
You're really going to need to hold on to these, at least these 2 pawns.
Okay, so
So what would be the first move, the most obvious move that?
king d6.
Okay, so let's start with king d6.
No, I'm actually thinking about sacking my bishop. I had some crazy idea, but
What were you thinking?
This may be crazy. Like, this is a crazy idea, and I don't know if it's on. I was thinking of bishop h3, but I don't know if that's sound.
And if pawn takes?
And then I can move my king in. And do I have enough time to do all this?
In here?
I'm thinking bishop
This is actually how the game went, and bishop h3 is considered the most brilliant move of all times.
Oh, good.
Yeah, so good. Congratulations. That's a really hard move to find.
Okay. Good.
But it all stems from understanding really some fundamental.
When she gave me that hint with the king going up there, that seemed to me then.
Yeah,
Once I knew that, the rest of it was not. It was not that hard.
Yeah, once we identify these fundamental features of the
Right.
position, the moves sort of suggest themselves. And if you start working through some variations, you'll start encountering some problems, and then moves that solve those problems will also suggest themselves. So let's go through a couple of variations. Like if we go king d6, like the gentleman in the back was suggesting, white will play king f2, and after king c5, king e3, and we're just not going to get to the e4 square ever. And we might say, well, but c4 still looks pretty good, because then I'm going to come here and I'm going to queen this pawn. But that's just never going to happen, right? Bishop takes f6, and if you ever come to b3, I will come to d2, and after a3, I will just spend the tempo with my bishop, and after a2, there's just no way to break through. And if you ever try to go king a2 in order to get your king to b1, I will just maintain my king close by. So we can't break through on the queen side. The other option is to try to actually get the king to e4. So by moving the bishop, maybe bishop b1, but after king f2, king f5, king e3, the white king makes it to the center just in time. Another option would be to play bishop e4, trying to tie you down to this g pawn, and maybe push the f pawn, but this really doesn't accomplish much, right? Again, we see this idea where black is not making any headway on the queen side. So once you understand that if the king would get to e4, then you could play d4 and shut this bishop down if it ever takes on f6 from protecting the a1 square. The game is over. So the move bishop h3 is really the fastest route to e4. So the game went g takes h3.
So does white have to take the bishop?
Right, so if you go king f2, I'm going to go king f5, and I'm threatening to go king e4. And the problem is, if you go king e3, which is the move you would want to play, I can just take on g2. So the bishop is not just out of the way of the king, it's also threatening your g2 pawn.
Well, now you have 3.
Now you have 3, and 3 is just too much. You're not going to be able to stop me on 3 fronts. I don't know if anybody ever seen Jaws. You know, not with 3 barrels. You can't go down. Well, except in that movie, he did.
I like Jaws when I say, I think we need a bigger boat.
Yeah. You know, that line is completely improvised. It wasn't in the script.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So after bishop h3, white took it. So king f5, king f2, and king e4. And now after bishop takes f6, you only have 1 pawn for the bishop, but white's position is resignable. Because now after d4,
No, that pawn's funny.
it's not easy to stop this pawn. White played bishop e7, and now king d3. So we're threatening to go king c2 and push the d pawn. Bishop c5, preventing king c2, but now king c4. And now bishop e7, and how would you play here?
King C3.
King c3.
Oh, he's just gonna pin the pawn, right?
Yeah, you can get away with that.
Yeah, like bishop.
First
oh,
I
no,
thought, yeah,
you
you
can't.
can get away with that. The bishop is totally tied down.
Yeah,
Hmm.
you can't.
So, actually, I have king b3 as the
That
most.
move seems to be reasonable.
The point is really to get to c2.
Yeah, I don't know why would that move doesn't stop it either.
Well, I was thinking maybe against king c3, I can actually play this move.
Yeah, I was thinking, but can you that's not true.
Or maybe here, I can actually go here and tie you down to d4. Because you can't go c2 because I take it,
Right.
and you can't go a3 because I take this
So
one.
if I push,
And if you push d3, then I can just go here.
and
Oh wait, but then you
king
can
up,
Yeah.
you can go d2, right?
yeah, so.
The bishop.
Wait, and here
Yeah.
takes
But
takes.
I'm winning.
Are you?
You don't think
How are you going to win? I guess you should.
but I can march over and take, you don't think I have enough time to grab the pawns and get out of position?
You can do this, right?
No, but that isn't, no, go back.
Oh, but wait, I have this move. Haha.
No, but this,
And now it's a draw.
but go back. But I have a question, you can't go back. Can't we not sacrifice that pawn and grab those pawns? We don't have enough time for that.
All right, so where do you want to go? You want to go this way?
Well, I want to time this.
You might have enough time.
Yeah, I'm just thinking I may have it.
Yeah.
I have the opposite.
Yeah, I mean, this looks way too slow,
Yeah,
right?
but no, well, I control long. Yeah, I'm okay. That's what I thought.
Yeah,
You
so
have
you,
to have a-
you have a point here. So after king takes, you could go king c4, I suppose. Yeah, that looks like a win.
Yeah, because
Now, can I do anything better, though? Can I go this? I guess not, right?
yeah, I'm just going to move my king up.
You go here and
Yeah.
here, and then you just go
No,
there.
yeah,
Yeah. So maybe king c3 doesn't really make a difference.
I didn't think.
Yeah.
Didn't feel like it did.
And if I go here,
So we push.
Yeah.
there,
Yeah.
here,
Oh, interesting. Now I have to be careful. Yeah, that's dangerous. That's dangerous.
you might just go here, right? And then there. Because
you have to, yeah.
my idea is that if you do this, I go here,
I know.
and if you queen,
Yeah, you
I
win.
take, and then I take your queen.
Yeah, then I'm losing.
Yeah. But king d3 looks good enough.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So maybe king c3 really doesn't change things too much. Anyway, it's a pretty cool endgame.
Oh yeah.
Ben Simon, do we have time for one more?
It's your call.
We have time for one more. All right. All right. Let's make it a fairly recent one. Let's actually just go to the important position.
That's a recent.
I mean, 2013 is pretty recent.
Yeah.
This die could. Oh, not Russian.
I was actually watching this game live.
What is that Russian?
It's black to move. Aronian Anand from the Tata Steel Tournament of 2013.
Bishop takes H2.
Bishop takes h2.
Yeah. Okay. I was looking at that too.
And after king takes, you want to go knight g4, right?
Yeah.
Right. It's winning the night.
I remember king g1,
Well, I mean, you just take.
right?
Yeah.
Hmm.
I mean, you're a pawn.
So let's say after bishop takes, I guess I guess I have to take it. Do I? Can I go here?
I mean, then I just.
Yeah. Interesting.
Because I'm also threatening to take on h7, and I might just trap your bishop. Well, maybe not as long as you could play c5. Maybe I can trap it this way. I mean, bishop takes h2 looks interesting. I mean, the worst that could happen, I mean, because I don't think it's such a good idea for white to take on h7, right? If we go back, if takes here, we're threatening to trap the bishop, but we're also threatening queen h4 and queen h2 checkmate.
Yeah.
So this doesn't look that great for white. Maybe bishop takes h2 would have been good too. Anand played the move c5, which sort of leaves everything lingering in the air, whether it's bishop takes h2 or whether it's some b4 idea now. So white took on h7, and now black played knight g4.
Oh.
So the idea is to get the queen involved. And Aronian played f4, shutting down the bishop, it would seem. But here, after c takes d4, e takes d4, bishop c5. Kind of a mind-boggling move.
Yeah.
And the point is that after d takes c5, knight takes c5. What do? Let's say, well, knight takes f8, but then I just take on d3, and then the queen comes in, checks, and king takes f8. Material is even, but I think you're getting smoked here because you just can't get your queenside pieces out. So the other option, I guess, would be to go bishop to e2. And are we going to do check
Well,
here,
yeah.
check,
Yeah.
takes, and takes, and now I'm threatening checkmate on g2. And your bishop is pinned, right? So the queen is hanging. So there's really no good way to stop queen takes g2 or bishop takes g2. So Aronian played bishop e2, and now knight d to e5.
Wow. There was nothing there. It didn't capture anything, did it?
What's that?
Did it capture something, or was that? That was
No, there was nothing there.
It was empty. Okay.
So again, the idea is just to get the queen, right, in, and now queen g1.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a nice move.
By the way, this looks, I don't know if anybody's seen the Escher exhibit across the street, but in one of Escher's prints, he actually has a smothered mate sort of hidden in the painting.
Wait,
Well,
where
it's
is
actually a wood carving. Huh?
Oh, where is it?
What's that?
Where is it?
Across the street in the Hall of Fame,
It is?
there's an exhibit on display by MC Escher. I highly recommend it. So, white took the other knight, thinking, well, now there's going to be no knight f2. But after bishop takes d4, king h1, knight takes g4, took on f8, and now f5. Again, a very strange looking move, because everything is just hanging. Now, I'm guessing the point of f5 is that against queen h4, which would be the move we would all make, white has this nice defensive idea. Queen h7, getting the queens off the board. And white is up in exchange. This still looks very promising for black, but it's not necessarily checkmate. So we just ask ourselves, what is our opponent trying to do? Queen h7, so f5 simply stops that. And it also stops knight knight e4 is not possible because of the pin. So I guess just queen h7. Knight g6.
That's what I was thinking.
Yeah, so this also prevents queen h4. Makes a lot of sense. But queen f6, I will take your knight, and then I will resume my threats along the h file. So h3, queen takes, queen e2, queen h5. Right? We can't take this knight because this is checkmate. So queen h5, and now after queen d3,
Oh, yeah. Oh, that's nice.
just a nice little interference there.
Yeah, you fit the main.
So if you take on e3, you will get checkmated in 2 moves. Or here, wherever you like best. You can choose. So Actually, after bishop e3, he just resigned because you just can't stop queen takes h3. So hopefully, I've made a case that when you hear this term, the Romantic period, it shouldn't necessarily take you back to the 19th century. I mean, there are plenty of romantic games taking place right before our eyes. And I've just started to assemble this database, and I think it's going to be growing quite quickly. And I'm thinking of games that are coming to my mind that were brilliant too. There's a Kamsky Ding Liren. Also, once I get home, I'm going to start plugging some stuff in here. But anyway, plenty to look forward to. So thanks for listening, and I will see you guys next week. Thank you.